In orbit around a bloated lavender gas giant, suspended in the vacuum like a jewel carved from arrogance, floated the Pangalactic Colosseum. It rotated slowly, smugly, exhaling bursts of neon from its spires, each one taller than the pyramids of Ixtal Prime. It was less a venue and more an interstellar monument to species-wide pettiness. From orbit, it looked like a flower. From inside, it sounded like 12 diplomatic incidents being negotiated with chainsaws. Inside, the crowd had begun its usual pre-battle hysteria. 1,000 species and their appendages, pheromones, stink glands, voice cords, telepathic shrieks, and cloud forms filled the viewing tiers with a din that could sterilize a cow. There were floating crustacean nobles chanting in click code. A fungal choir of V-mites released fragrant spores of encouragement that knocked out 3 spectators. On the upper tier, a gelatinous ambassador from the Spleeth Collective jiggled in what he swore was rhythmic applause. In the ceremonial box, the announcers began their duet of doom. There were 2, always, one for the warm-blooded species, one for those who thought temperature was a choice. The warm-blooded announcer, Kurlax Gummo, wore a ruffled red suit and 4-dimensional sunglasses. The cold spectrum announcer, Vleeb Vleeb, was a floating echolocation pulse interpreted in real time by a holographic shrimp. Together, they oozed charisma. "Welcome, you multi-tentacled miscreants," Kurlax boomed, voice amplified through galactic translators. "Welcome to the 994th Trigalactic Combat Trials. May your side's champions bleed aesthetically, or rupture ceremonially." Vleeb Vleeb translated, bouncing its shrimp hologram in delight. Cameras zipped around the Colosseum in precise choreographies, broadcasting every pulsating second across 5 galaxies. This was not merely a sporting event. This was how decisions were made. Elections? Too corruptible. Diplomacy? Too slow. No, the galaxy had found its perfect solution. Settle trade disputes, border claims, and cultural slights with bloodshed, and make it televised. In a way, it made perfect sense. Why talk when you could maim? On a screen the size of a battleship's hull, holograms flickered to life showing the key match of the cycle. A particularly nasty conflict between the Grux Confederacy and the SZKRR Dominion over gravitational mining rights in the contested Dython Expanse was to be settled today. But nobody cared about that. Not really. Because the Confederacy, in a moment of maddened diplomacy, had requested an Earthling to fight on its behalf. And the Dominion had agreed. Because who feared humans? The crowd murmured, hissed, burbled, and sparkled at the thought. Humans. Fragile bipeds who barely understood wormholes and spent more on entertainment than weapons. Their species had entered the galactic stage late and by accident, thanks to a probe launched by a billionaire with a messiah complex and surprisingly good aim. Since then, humanity had stumbled through the interstellar door with all the grace of a drunk at a royal wedding. They'd sent poets to war tribunals. They'd argued over asteroid patents with jokes. They'd introduced sarcasm to diplomatic protocols. Most species found humans confusing but adorable, like a small dog trying to command a tank. And yet, today, a human would fight. In the Colosseum's lowest tier, across the red marble floor laced with embedded bones, ornamental, allegedly, a single combat chamber opened. Steam hissed out like it was under contractual obligation. From the cloud emerged someone so underwhelming the crowd leaned in just to check their own optics weren't broken. She was average height. Tan skin. Black fatigues. Combat boots laced with the indifference of someone who didn't believe in flair. A gray t-shirt with the words "Don't talk to me until I've ended a war" in cracked ink. She had a duffel bag, a paper book, and zero interest in her surroundings. She walked with the sort of ease one acquires from never once needing to run. A 12-eyed Gronth noble leaned over to its friend. "That's it? That's the Earthling." The friend, a being made entirely of flammable gas, responded by gently combusting. The human sat down in the prep zone. No entourage. No flags. She dropped her duffel bag, took out a battered thermos, and poured herself what smelled like strong, weapon-grade coffee. Then she opened her book, Galactic Bureaucracy, a Weapon of Mass Distraction. This was Sergeant Mira Lang. Most files on her had been lost in a digital accident on Earth. What was known had trickled through the galactic grapevine: a decorated soldier, special operations background, assigned to no known unit, but with a service history riddled with redacted triumphs. Her name didn't inspire fear, because nobody who feared her was left alive to tell others. And yet she looked, in every conceivable way, unremarkable. From a nearby alcove, a SCKRR envoy, one of the Dominion's Hydra-like diplomats, oozed closer and eyed her with something between curiosity and disdain. It had the voice of a wet accordion. "Are you the one who will fight?" Mira didn't look up. "Is there another Earthling sneaking up behind me with a monologue and a rocket launcher?" The SCKRR paused. "You are not what we expected." "No one ever is," she said, and flipped a page. Back in the main arena, holograms blared to life again. On the other side of the field, a separate chamber began its spectacle. Trumpets blared, literally. One species communicated entirely via brass instruments. Flames erupted. A dozen small servants were crushed for effect. And out of the smoke emerged a being who looked like someone had taught a tank how to walk. General H.R. Skull the Uncrushable. He was a 12-foot-tall behemoth encased in magma-forged armor that hissed with internal vents. His 3 eyes glowed like bad decisions. His teeth were plated. His fists looked like they had punched through time. He flexed. Somewhere in the crowd, an ambassador swooned and was fanned by sentient towels. H.R. Skull had ended 2 planetary wars with his bare hands and a witty slogan. He had once used a fallen enemy's leg as a pen. He currently had a small moonside vacation estate carved from the spine of his first mentor. "Let the match begin," Kurlak shouted, his voice shaking wine out of glasses across the upper tiers. "Offer your last wishes, and may your disembowelment be spiritually fulfilling," added Vleeb in pulsing shrill. A dome of shimmering blue light sealed off the arena, isolating the combatants from meddling external forces, like mercy. The arena floor began to change, tiles shifting, terrain emerging. Lava, sand, water, gravity fluctuations, spikes. It reconfigured to test all forms of combat. No one understood how the arena knew what to do. Some said it had its own religion. Others just called it over-designed. Mira watched none of this. She stirred sugar into her coffee with the end of her knife. In the diplomatic box, the Grux ambassador fidgeted nervously. "You're certain she was the right choice?" he asked Earth's representative, a tired woman named Alice Ng who'd seen too many treaties and too little sleep. Ng sipped her own tea. "Absolutely. She hasn't even looked at her opponent," the ambassador whispered. "She already sized him up 3 hours ago. Did it on the flight in. Knew his stance from the way he holds his chin. She's just waiting for the arena to get over itself." The ambassador blinked all 17 eyes. "She's not normal." "No. She's Earth's Plan Z. Because if you ever see her in a room, it means a through-Y failed." The crowd began to chant. Well, many of them. Others made throat noises, shot flares, or exuded ceremonial slime. H.R. Skull basked in it all, raising his arms, roaring his victory before the fight began. He pointed at Mira. "I shall grind you into a mist and dance in your memory." Mira finally looked up, blinked. "Loud," she muttered. The referee, an incorporeal AI shaped like a floating egg, buzzed for silence. "By order of the Trigalactic Council and the ancient laws of arena combat, let this duel commence. No external weapons. No interdimensional interference. No unauthorized haiku." The arena floor hissed with power. H.R. Skull took one thundering step forward. Mira stood up, stretched once, and slung her duffel bag over her shoulder. Her coffee thermos she handed to a startled technician. Her book she tucked into her waistband. The crowd leaned forward. H.R. Skull bellowed. And Mira smiled. Just a little. The lights changed. A single chime echoed. Combat had begun. But Mira didn't charge. She strolled into the arena like she was window shopping. Across from her, H.R. Skull launched into a sprint, ground cracking beneath him, his war cry echoing through dimensions. The crowd rose, all eyes on the impending collision of power and fragility. The galactic elite held their breath. And Mira? Mira tapped her temple once. Her eyes flashed a pale blue. Then she vanished into motion. Somewhere in the audience, a dignitary whispered, "Oh no, she's smiling." The Colosseum roared. And the story had only just begun. The first punch from General HRR Skull came with enough force to reclassify local gravitational constants. It landed where Mira had stood a blink ago, demolishing a column of basalt rock that the arena had thoughtfully supplied as an obstacle. The explosion of dust and stone shards ricocheted against the dome, triggering polite applause from the V-Mite fungal choir and an audible shiver from a diplomat made entirely of whiskers. Mira landed 10 meters behind him without a sound. She didn't crouch, didn't pant. She adjusted her sleeve. Her left boot squeaked faintly, like it was embarrassed to be involved. From the viewing gallery, a barrage of analytics exploded across every screen. Speed metrics, force curves, probabilistic death outcomes. All of them slanted in HRR Skull's favor. 99%. 99.6. One even calculated the odds of Mira surviving long enough to blink. Not encouraging. Mira blinked anyway. General HRR Skull turned with something resembling curiosity. His armor hissed as it vented excess heat from its internal furnace. "That should have vaporized you." "Should have," Mira replied. He tilted his head, as if she were a new type of puzzle box. "You are unarmed. I get emotional about clutter." Another swing came. This one arced low, aiming to cleave her in half at the knees. Mira jumped, just a simple hop, but her boots found a vector that used the arena's fluctuating gravity as a springboard. She flipped lazily over his shoulder, her body twisting in midair with all the effort of someone reaching for a light switch. She landed behind him, brushed some dust off her sleeve, yawned. In the VIP lounge, the Grux ambassador hyperventilated into a ceremonial bagpipe. Beside him, Earth's ambassador Ing remained still. Her fingers tapped lightly on the armrest. Not nervous. Calculating. Remembering. Mira Lang had been born on the tail end of Earth's third planetary reconstruction. The sky over her birth city was copper-colored from the dust of orbital debris. Her earliest memories involved hiding beneath old metro tracks while above, riots over food synthetics turned to street wars. By age 6, she could disassemble a scavenged railgun. By 12, she had 3 confirmed kills in self-defense, a phrase human tribunals had started stretching like saltwater taffy to avoid awkward headlines. No one had recruited her. They'd tried. But Mira didn't join things. The army, after multiple failed outreach attempts, decided to simply keep track of her. She'd show up on their radar after particularly complex peacekeeping disasters where someone in a black jacket fixed a situation with impossible precision and left without a name. A 3-day hostage situation resolved in 30 minutes. An embassy siege diffused when the attackers turned on each other. A rogue AI virus traced, purged, and replaced with a digital recipe for banana bread. The stories passed through whispers. Even Earth's own intelligence divisions disagreed on her status. Rogue asset? Deep cover? Symptom of a bureaucratic hallucination? One officer, long retired, had summed it up best in a single phrase scribbled on a napkin during a court-mandated therapy session. She doesn't fight wars. She ends them. Back in the arena, HRR Skull snarled. You dodge well. But that only delays the end. Delaying the end is half of military strategy, Mira murmured. The other half is making you feel smug about it. He lunged. This time she didn't retreat. Instead, she sidestepped just enough to be inside his guard, close enough to smell the reek of thermal oil and scorched protein packs that powered his armor. She reached out, tapped 2 fingers against the second seam on his right pauldron. A harmless gesture. To the audience, it looked like a fizzle. But a moment later, the pauldron hissed violently and detonated. The shockwave sent HRR Skull stumbling. Not far. Not hurt. But startled. Mira was already gone, halfway across the arena again. The announcers scrambled. She appears to be utilizing a pressure tactic? Chemical touch. No known weapon was deployed. I believe that was a judo of the armor plating. A disassembly charm? Possibly sorcery. It's not sorcery, Vleeb. She just knows how things work. The holographic shrimp spun wildly as the audience murmured. Somewhere, a Spleeth noble's betting tentacle hesitated mid-wager. Churraskull growled low in his throat. Trickster. Mira rolled her neck until it popped. I'm many things. But tricks? Those are for magicians and children. She turned slightly. Just enough for the cameras to catch the line of her jaw, the way her eyes scanned everything. Geometry, timing, pressure zones, power arcs. She didn't look like a warrior. She looked like someone solving an equation with blood. He roared and charged again. This time, the arena floor joined in. From below, seismic pulses created sudden chasms. Walls erupted. Pillars snapped sideways. One of them hurled toward Mira like a spinning blade of death. She didn't flinch. She dropped flat, let it whistle over her, then rolled to her feet and kicked off it as it passed, launching herself toward Churraskull's chest. She drove a single heel into the joint between armor plates. Again, a small move. Again, dismissed by the crowd. Until his right leg locked mid-step. He staggered. She's disabling him one plate at a time, someone shouted. A betting screen flickered. The odds began to tilt. Barely. But it was enough to make the scent of panic drift from the upper box seats. Churraskull twisted, freed the jammed limb with a bellow, and spun, swinging a backhanded blow that tore through the arena wall. Chunks of engineered obsidian flew like shrapnel. One shard sliced Myra's arm. Shallow. It left a red ribbon across her forearm. She glanced at it. Snorted. You owe me dry cleaning. Why do you keep talking? He snapped. Because if I didn't, this would be very dull. He charged again, more cautious now. Mira retreated, deliberate, drawing him through terrain he didn't notice but she had mapped in her head. Another pressure tile. Another trap sprung. An eruption of concussive gas knocked Churraskull off balance. Mira swept low, not to strike, but to reach into her boot and withdraw a small ceramic object. To the audience, it looked like a marble. To engineers in the know, it looked like bad news. She threw it gently. It bounced once. Then it shattered against Churraskull's knee joint. A pulse of magnetic distortion tore through his exoleg, triggering a complete reboot of that limb's motor control. He fell. Not hard. Not like a crash. More like gravity remembered he was supposed to obey it. The crowd gasped. No one had ever made Churraskull fall. Mira took a step forward. Now we're even. The behemoth rose, slow, deliberate. I was twitching now. I underestimated you. That's a very long list you're compiling, Mira said. You're not just a soldier. No. What are you? Myra's voice went quiet. I'm the one they send when they stop pretending rules matter. And for the first time, something unfamiliar flitted across the general's face. Not fear. Not exactly. But the seed of it. Recognition. The crowd was catching on, too. She's not just dodging. She's optimizing the arena. Wait, she's manipulating the fight algorithm. She's predicting terrain shifts before they happen. How is that legal? It's not illegal. No one thought to make a rule against having that much situational awareness. The Grux ambassador turned to Ing. She's dismantling him. Ing nodded. She does that. Brick by brick. But she's not even using weapons. Exactly. In the arena, Mira ducked another lunge, slid beneath a swinging gauntlet, and stood atop Churraskull's shoulder as he tried to crush her. She leapt again, landed 10 feet away, and turned. Churraskull was breathing heavily now. What do you want? He asked, chest heaving. Mira considered the question. Nothing, she said. Which is why I'm dangerous. The crowd was silent now. No more bets. No more chants. Even the spore choirs had gone still, their release cycles arrested by suspense. You're not winning, Churraskull said. You're breaking me. Mira didn't reply. She didn't need to. He charged again. She didn't dodge. Instead, she stood. At the last moment, she moved, but not out of the way. She moved into his charge, just enough to disrupt it. His foot caught a loose tile she deliberately loosened 3 minutes earlier. He fell forward. She stepped onto his back as he hit the floor. Planted one boot. Quiet. The AI referee buzzed to life. Combatant Mira Lang of Earth has achieved total dominant positional superiority. Estimated continuation of fight will result in organ failure and potential species-level embarrassment. Recommend match termination. A pause. The crowd held its breath. The SCKRR Dominion's envoy stood in the box, face unreadable. He raised one claw and dropped it. The fight was over. Mira stepped off the fallen general. Dust puffed around her feet. She retrieved her coffee thermos from the technician. Sipped it. Grimaced. Cold, she muttered. The cameras zoomed in. And Mira Lang, the nobody with no rank, no insignia, no fanfare, walked off the bloodsport field as if she just finished her morning jog. The universe watched. And began to panic. The arena lights pulsed like a dying sun having a migraine. Mira squinted upward just long enough to calculate the lighting strobe pattern, then stepped into the kill zone like it was a stroll through a spring drizzle. It smelled of scorched tungsten and ammonia-based sweat, sense of war in a galaxy that had long since forgotten how to make anything gentle. Across from her, General HRR Skull rose again. He shouldn't have been able to. His right knee was fried, one shoulder smoldered where his pauldron used to be, and 3 of his internal coolants were leaking out in different languages. But he stood. He always did. That was his thing. Some species had pride. Others had philosophy. The Brack had durability and revenge. Mira exhaled through her nose. Not tired. Not triumphant. Just present. The crowd's silence was suffocating. Even the betting drones had paused their humming, hovering awkwardly in midair like they'd wandered into a funeral and couldn't find the exit. Across the galaxy, trillions watched their screens, hoping someone else would blink first. HRR Skull cracked his neck. It sounded like a dozen knuckles snapping through concrete. Still standing, he growled. Gravity's not trying hard enough, Mira replied. He laughed then. A sound like tectonic plates arguing. You move like a shadow. Hit like memory foam. But you haven't broken me. Mira's smile didn't reach her eyes. I don't break people. I let them discover they were already broken. That did it. The general charged. All subtlety gone. His fury slammed into the floor, each step leaving impressions deeper than tactical craters. He moved like the universe owed him space and was late paying up. Mira moved at the last possible moment. To the untrained eye, she vanished. To the trained one, she pivoted just outside his reach and placed a single foot against the arena's kinetic panel, using his own momentum to redirect herself across his flank. She ran along the wall sideways, kicked off a pillar, and flipped backward over his charge. The audience couldn't follow. Not really. Not in the way that mattered. They saw motion but not method. To Mira, every vector was a solution waiting for the right equation. She landed in a crouch, and only then drew her blade. It wasn't glowing. It wasn't humming. It was dull steel, shaped with care and zero ceremony. Compact. Meant for precision, not performance. In a galaxy of plasma lashes and nanosabers, her weapon looked offensively modest. HRR Skull blinked. Finally. You're not flattered, are you? No. Relieved. I thought you were going to dance me to death. Tempting, she muttered and lunged. He met her charge with a bellow, arms wide like a bear trap. But Mira didn't strike. Instead, she slid between his legs, turned, and drove the tip of her blade straight into the auxiliary vent beneath his spine guard. It didn't pierce. It wedged. Exactly as planned. The blade lodged itself, and as HRR Skull moved to crush her again, it pulled at just the right angle to lock his entire spinal brace into emergency stasis mode. A kill switch designed for battlefield triage. His back seized. He roared, not in pain, but in denial. You cheat. I read manuals, Mira said. It's different. The crowd buzzed. Not in anger. In awe. The kind of awe that felt nervous, like maybe they were watching the beginning of a very specific extinction event. HFY Skull stumbled. He tore the blade free, hurling it away. It clattered into the dust, forgotten. Mira didn't chase it. She didn't need it anymore. He came at her, one arm dragging. His pace slowed. The damage finally caught up. She ducked a clumsy swing, jammed her elbow into the seam of his wrist armor, and twisted. A mechanical snap. The hand dropped limp. He looked at it, stunned. How? Biomechanics. You shouldn't leave service ports unencrypted. You're bluffing. Am I? He swung the other arm. This one slower, like he knew he was feeding her opportunities. She caught it, redirected it, slammed his hand into a protruding spike of arena decor, one of those tasteful symbols of ancient Brack honor. It shattered his gauntlet. The spike snapped. That was historical, he muttered, stunned. Was, she agreed. The audience began to chant. Not for him. For her. Softly at first. Miare. 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 It spread like a virus. The whisper of awe mutating into belief. She ignored it. Fame had no weight. But war did. And this one wasn't over yet. HFY Skull took one final breath. Even if you beat me, they'll never honor Earth. Mira stepped close enough to look him in the eyes, dark pools of violence trained since hatching. Then I'll give them something better than honor, she said. Fear. And then she moved. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It was surgical. She kicked off his chest, used his stagger to spin behind him, and with her bare hands, tapped 3 precise points along his neck and helmet seam. The helmet hissed. Slid free. Exposed, his primary breathing node gasped against the dry air. She didn't strike it. She leaned in. And whispered. No one heard the words. Not the cameras. Not the mics. But whatever she said, it made him freeze. His arms dropped. He stepped back. Collapsed. Not from injury. From realization. Silence fell like a guillotine. A long, endless second passed. Then the referee's voice echoed, glitchy with shock. Combatant Mira Lang of Earth has achieved complete submission. Fight concluded. Earth, victorious. The crowd didn't erupt. Not yet. They absorbed the moment, as if afraid any reaction would break the illusion. Then the scream began. It wasn't applause. It was a seismic shudder of disbelief. The SCKRR envoy stood. His mandibles twitched. His aides whispered. One collapsed. The Grux diplomat stared straight ahead, unblinking. Earth's ambassador Ing smiled thinly. And Mira? She walked to her blade, picked it up, wiped it on her sleeve, sheathed it, then walked off without a word. Behind her, HFY Skull remained on one knee. He didn't rise. Not for a long time. And somewhere, across space, in a darkened war room orbiting a sunless planet, a red light blinked on. And a voice said, very softly, Earth has a new weapon. Not a weapon, exactly. Just Mira. Just a woman with no medals. No rank. No fear. And, increasingly, no equals. The war hadn't started. But it had changed. Across the galaxy, the shockwave moved not through space, but through policy. In the capital station orbiting the glacial moon of Arx 7, the High Table of Species convened emergency session #18-442, although none of them dared call it an emergency out loud. That would imply panic. And panic was for the unevolved. Earth cannot be granted strategic parity based on a single blood sport outcome, hissed Chancellor of Tor, a creature composed primarily of mandibles, robes, and offended tradition. It wasn't blood sport, corrected the Relaxian trade envoy, casually sipping a beverage made from fermented electric eels. It was sanctioned diplomatic arbitration. According to Article 19b of the Interstellar Compact, The outcome is binding. Article 19B was written for settling disputes over mining rights, not reputational annihilation. A pause. Then, the Walkran delegate, who hadn't spoken since his species accidentally invented planetary demolition as an art form, said, "She didn't just win. She unmade him." HRR Skull's combat file has a neural redaction alert. The footage is being quarantined by 6 governments. What did she whisper to him? Unclear. Audio suppression via tongue microflexion. Some kind of earth throat technique. A low, horrified murmur rippled through the chamber. Earth throat techniques were now a matter of intergalactic concern. Back on the ground. Well, the space-anchored city-state where the fight had taken place, the corridors buzzed with a tension that neither celebration nor mourning could satisfy. The arena had emptied, but its echo still pressed against the metal bones of the facility. Mira sat alone in the locker pod, her feet bare on cold tile. Her combat uniform, still intact, looked like it belonged to someone more interesting. She twirled her blade, now clean, balanced perfectly on 2 fingers. "Knock knock," came a voice she didn't recognize. The door hissed open. Ambassador Ng stepped in. Behind him, his security detail flanked the hall with all the enthusiasm of vacationing funeral directors. "You're trending," he said, holding up a tablet. Mira didn't look. "That good, huh? Earth's ghost. The quiet kill. Whisper fighter." The SZKRR Council officially filed a semantic protest because your name translates to death cabbage in their root language. Botanical fame. My childhood dream. Ng smiled faintly, then sobered. "They're scared, Mira. They should be. You know that's not the plan. Wasn't it? You were supposed to be... not this." She turned her head, just enough to make him hesitate. "Not what? Effective? Efficient? Embarrassing? Symbolic?" Myra's eyes narrowed. "You sent me to lose." He didn't answer. "I was a pawn. Not a pawn. A bluff. You were meant to buy us time. Stall the brack until we could negotiate a face-saving retreat." "Too bad. I don't bluff." Ng sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. "We need to control the narrative." "You already lost it." He looked at her, carefully. "What did you say to him?" Mira stood. Slowly. "A truth." "Which was?" She walked past him, each step echoing like punctuation marks. That history only remembers the first time someone loses to the thing they thought was weak. By the time Ng turned, she was gone. Outside the arena complex, diplomats scrambled through the corridors like ants under siege. Holograms flickered with early news segments, debates, breakdowns, fear-mongering graphics. The phrase human military potential was now trending beside unpredictable evolution and possible bioterrorism. A Grux war minister barked into his comm, "I don't care if she's one woman, you upgrade the countermeasures, now." Meanwhile, Mira walked unnoticed through the lower halls, where the lights didn't shine as brightly and no one asked for autographs. She preferred it here, among the cargo loaders and maintenance drones. These machines didn't care about glory. They just did their jobs. She reached a hangar. Her ship was there. Modest. No weapons racks. Just stealth systems, a mini-garden, and a chair she liked for staring into nothing. A voice buzzed her comm. "Lang." It was General HRR Skull. She stopped. "I asked for your channel. They gave it to me. Apparently, I'm not a threat anymore." "You're not," she said. "They've declared me medically unfit. Stripped my honors. Even the scars. I didn't ask for that. I know. That's why I'm telling you. I still hate you. Good. Hate keeps the world spinning. But I also understand you." Mira leaned on her ship's frame. "That's worse." He chuckled, a broken, tired sound. "You made me doubt what I was. That's not something we recover from. Maybe you weren't what you thought. Or maybe you are more than anyone thought Earth could be." A pause. "Do you think they'll come for you?" he asked. They always come eventually. You'll be ready. Always am. He went quiet. Then, goodbye, Lang. Goodbye, General. The line went dead. Mira exhaled. Stared out the hangar bay at the stars, each one an unfinished war. She didn't feel triumphant. Just certain. Later that week, the High Table issued a joint communiqué. Earth would be elevated from provisional curiosity to monitored combat entity, which was galactic diplomatic lingo for, do not poke the thing that killed a warlord with bare hands. Meanwhile, recruitment numbers for Earth's defense cadets tripled. So did surveillance. On the entertainment side, 5 different holostreams offered dramatizations of the match. One featured Mira as a three-eyed telepath. Another cast her as an ancient weapon reawakened. None of them included the silence, the stillness, the math behind her every movement. And none of them captured the moment she whispered and changed a civilization. Mira watched none of it. She stayed quiet, trained, walked, grew tomatoes. It annoyed intelligence. She wasn't performing the role of Earth's hero. She wasn't doing anything, and in that absence, the galaxy grew increasingly paranoid. How many more like her were there? Was she the tip of the spear or the whole damn arsenal? Could Earth really hide that kind of power behind plain uniforms and tired eyes? No one could say for sure. And that was the real weapon. Fear wasn't in the blow, it was in the pause before it landed. Somewhere in the Orion Fringe, a small colony requested diplomatic aid from Earth instead of the usual top-tier protectorates. A warlord deferred a planned incursion against Terran mining operations. A pirate fleet blinked out of radar just before entering Earth-marked airspace. And Mira? She sat in a cafe in a station nobody important visited, sipping something that smelled like tea and probably wasn't. A child approached. Alien. Pink fur. 3 arms. Holding a sketchpad. Are you the human? I'm a human, Mira said. Did you break the big one? I asked him a hard question. The child grinned, handed her the sketch. A messy crayon outline of her with a giant sword and lightning shooting from her eyes. You forgot the T, Mira said. The child laughed. Next time. She watched them run off. Then looked at the drawing. And smiled. It wasn't right. But it wasn't wrong. History was already editing her, sculpting her into something else. She let it. Because what really mattered was this. Next time, they'd think twice. Before they laughed. Before they dismissed. Before they sent anyone to Earth and thought diplomacy didn't come with bruises. The galaxy had asked for help. Earth had answered. Quietly. Efficiently. Brutally. Mic drop diplomacy.